You're running a successful consulting business, but something's not right. You're working more hours, but not seeing the proportional growth. Every decision still comes through you. Every proposal needs your touch. You know there's a better way. You're not just sure what it is. You're listening to the Paul Higgins podcast. I'm Paul, and I help consultants build businesses that don't require them to be at the center of everything. I spent 18 years at Coca-Cola, then built and sold my own consulting business. Along the way, I learned that working harder isn't the answer. Building better systems is. Each week, I sit down with consultants who's cracked the code on scalable growth and experts who support them. Real conversations and how they broke through the bottleneck and built businesses that work without them. Let's dive in. Most AI and tech consultants hit a wall around that six figures because they are still the center of everything: sales, delivery, and client management. They know they need to scale, but struggle with the how without losing quality or burning out. The challenge isn't just growing revenue, it's building a business that runs without you being the bottleneck. Hello, I'm Paul, and welcome to my podcast, episode 637. And in this episode, I talked to George Easton from ion8.net. You will learn from George lots of things. He's brilliant, but in particular, how he scaled from solo consultant to 60-person team by becoming the full cycle solo partner clients need. And he goes through in detail on exactly what that full cycle model is, why he refuses to transfer his IP and instead licenses everything, the decision that built his defensible competitive position. And he also talks about his village culture, leadership approach, and why radical transparency became crucial for managing cash flow challenges. George Easton built ion8.net into North America's largest Zoho partner by headcount after pivoting from executive recruiting during the 2008 crisis. What started as a necessity became a methodology, creating full-cycle business management consultancy that serves the client's single accountable point across the entire technology ecosystem. I'll now hand you over to George from ion8.net. Fantastic to have you here, George.
Oh, yes. Thanks for having me, Paul. Appreciate you.
Yeah. Well, always love to kick off with who your ideal clients are and what problems you love to solve for them. Over to you.
Yeah, thanks. That's kind of a big question. I'd say that the best clients that we have enjoyed working with the most over the years are the ones that really understand that maybe they've called us for a need that they think they need, only to realize that what we're about is like, put that need down for just a sec and let's talk about your goals. And the way we operate at Ion8 is it's all about being goal aligned. And what we find is most of the time when the phone rings, it's someone who's asking us for a tactical need that they believe is going to deliver a goal. And probably I'm one of a bunch of other vendors, all with disparate tactics that they believe are going to deliver what they want for their business. So when we have them put that conversation down and talk about goals, and they suddenly realize, oh, I didn't know what I didn't know. Those are the people that we like to work with the most.
And how do you handle the, hang on, I had this budget in mind and now I really want to achieve that goal, but now it's going to be a lot bigger budget. How do you get around those conversations?
Oh man, isn't that just the always conversation? Or it's the other version of that where it's like, hey, how much for a CRM? And I sort of go, I don't know, man. How much for a house? At which point they're like, oh, yeah, right. Of course, I need an architecture, right? And of course, we don't do it's that whole guesswork and padding thing, right? If I do it, someone's a loser. It's usually me, and it's sometimes you. So go there, But it's always discovery led. We have to get them to that point, and there are some tactics and strategies to handle that.
What, just on that process, is the discovery a paid discovery, or is that part of the sales process for you?
I mean, generally speaking, at the beginning, I'll do a little bit of speculation, with them, talk for sometimes an hour, 2 hours, or even up to like 4 hours, especially if they're like, oh, I got to bring my partners in on this. That's still not architecture, right? Like that's just sort of we're hardly scratching the surface of ballparking. Paul, we use a model, called a swag test model, which actually just stands for sweet wild ass guess, oddly enough. But it's kind of a joke, but it's otherwise known as the L1, L2, L3 model, where you are closing the cone of uncertainty with a ballpark followed by an estimate followed by a quote. And as I said, I'll do that like conversational speculation to give someone enough kind of like, well, I mean, and then and that will usually get them to go, oh, you're right. We probably should give you a few hours to dig a bit deeper, to read some documents, to ask some questions. And then I assure them, you'll get a statement of understanding for this ballpark, and then eventually an estimate, and then to a quote. Now, sometimes we obviously can leapfrog that if it's like, I don't know, how much for a landing page? Well, that's a bit different of a conversation than how much for oh, I'm a $10 million business. Can you make me a $20 million business? How much?
I know that and we're going to go in detail soon, but you cover legal, healthcare, manufacturing, and home services. Your average client size and the average, you don't have to talk about average deal size, but like, on that spectrum, how big are your clients? Are they $10 million clients as in turnover, or are they, smaller clients, or is it a bit of a mixture?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably fair to say that we've got clients of all sizes, particularly as you get into like the home services side, they can be quite disparate in their range. You'll find, the one guy in town who happens to employ 50, 60 people and he's got, a 15 to $20 million business. And then the other guy who's got, four employees and has cracked $1 million
Yes.
this past year. So we don't discriminate. We're willing to take money from anybody for the right services that we offer, of course. But I think it is fairer to say, with all joking aside, that manufacturing, legal, and healthcare in particular share some forms of commonality. One is that they get so busy that they don't want to be changing vendors very often.
Yes.
Two, they hold themselves to a high esteem and realizing in a lot of cases, like especially doctors and lawyers, that their bill rate is quite high and they're excellent and they deserve that rate. So there's nothing wrong with paying consulting a high hourly rate so long as they're of equal standard. There's a reason why we aim at those businesses, because of longevity and loyalty and lack of fear of paying good money for great service. I know that those are really personal traits for doctors and lawyers, but it's also sort of true with manufacturing. Manufacturing tends to have like bigger companies, more complexity, and people who have smaller areas of knowledge. But then they'll have department heads or like who will understand that integrative function across the whole company is like necessary in order to not stumble and fall and to rapidly scale the business. So we fit well in that model as well.
Yeah, brilliant. And I know that predominantly, well, as you expressed in our pre-brief, was you're predominantly a middleware company, but you obviously do a lot of Zoho middleware to whatever they're using, if we sort of use that analogy. Did you start out that way, or did you start out at Zoho and then you decided, hey, I needed to connect to more systems? Like, tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are.
I appreciate the opportunity, Paul. Thanks. Long before this part of my career, I was an executive recruiter. I've actually been self-employed since I was 17 years old, with a few spurts in the middle, one of which was IBM. And after IBM, where I sold for software group, CRM and ERP and supply chain and stuff like this, I went out and became an executive recruiter and I built a lot of, this drives me nuts, Web 2.0 companies. Clients like MicroStrategy, clients like Eloqua, and so on, built a lot of their early staff out. In fact, I was the 11th Canadian on LinkedIn, and they even sent me clothes and thanked me for joining, oddly enough. But back in those days, I was all cloud oriented, and I was a contingency-based executive recruiter. And as a contingency-based executive recruiter, when you don't have job orders of your own to work on, you work on other people's job orders. And what I had done was I had found Zoho CRM and Zoho Recruit, voice over IP, and at that point it was called Google Apps for Work. And I had strung together a little environment for myself, which worked really, really well. And then I started doing it for other compatriots, my other contingency-based recruiters that I sort of formed a bit of a network with. And that went on well until mortgage-backed securities crisis hit, at which point I had to totally reinvent myself because overnight nobody was going to pay a contingency recruitment fee to save their life. That market died instantly. I had to basically forge Ionate. We were originally founded as a marketing communications company. And right at the beginning, everybody was always using their aesthetic insight as to whether you were worth something or you weren't. And what I realized right away was I'm not pushing string uphill. I'm not going to have arguments with people over what is good design or what's bad design. Instead, I want to help people measure change in their business and prove my efficacy, not just like, well, your wife thinks it's good, so you must think it's good too, right? And that's when I went right back to the same ecosystem that I was dealing with before. And so inevitably, I've been deploying Zoho for other people's businesses for many years before I became a registered partner. I had no idea there was a partnership. I had no idea there was even such a thing as being any technology company's partner for approximately, I think, like 7 or 8 years I was doing it without it, right? And then to your question about how did I become a middleware guy? This one's sort of a funny answer, I guess. At some point, again, relying on my ability to sell from IBM, we early in Inate's life cycle, somebody said, "Hey, could you, make this and this?" And I said, "Yeah, yeah, of course I could." Except of course, I did so with such confidence that he was left to believe, as a result, that I must have done this a lot. And and then he said to me, "Okay, well, you're going to transfer intellectual property, right?" And I went, "Oh," and I looked at my wallet and thought, "I have no idea how to do that." So then cleverly, I went back to him and I went, "Well, I mean, if I transfer you intellectual property, then you're going to have to take care of all of my clients." Now, I said it in such a way that allowed those clients to be those I have not yet received or had. And he went, "Oh, yeah, no, no, I don't want to do that." And so from that point forward, I made it a rule. I do not transfer intellectual property to anybody. And
Yes.
then this came a dog food kind of trick, right? Where somebody would say, "Hey, excuse me, could you help me tie this to that?" And I would go, "Actually, yeah, here it is. I'll show it to you." And they go, "Oh, wow. And could you do one, two, three?" And I go, "Of course I can. I'll sell you one, two, three, and I won't sell you X to Y. You get to keep that in perpetuity along with one, two, three, but I own all the IP." And then they would go, "All right, fair deal." Over time, these small wins turned into quite a large intellectual property catalog, at the end of which, somewhere around 2019, we said, I think it's time that we take all these little bits and pieces. I mean, some pieces had like 10, 20 rounds of development on them
Yes.
through client engagements, but then we fully went hardcore with it in productization. I'll tell you a funny little aside. Have you ever seen The Simpsons?
Yes.
Okay, so there's this part, I think it's in the movie, where Homer is walking with a pig on the ceiling and he says, "Spider pig, spider pig." Okay, anyway, I don't really do a great Homer, but Spider Pig was our internal project name for our middleware for the longest time. Right. So the pig is this like large transmutational business logic capable middleware. And then the spider legs are all of the endpoint connectors. And really, truly, even though go to market, we have all these different customer facing products, Matters Locker, Instance Locker, or sorry, Instance Connector, Call Connector, etc. But they're all actually one product.
Yes.
And but more than that, that one product has, it touches ERP systems. It kind of goes everywhere. The baseline of everything that we do product wise is middleware, and it came that way.
Brilliant story. And this is an assumption that you're going to either validate or not. But I'm guessing, given your background, you're not a heavy tech guy. Like you're not there, the guy that's behind the scenes building it. Is that a good assumption or a poor assumption?
So I'm the visionary on all of the products. I'm the business strategist. IBM taught me to like what a blessing to go to IBM because though I was in software group, I could sell anything in software group, anything in hardware group, and anything in services in IBM Global Services, which basically just made me the equivalent of a technology Disney Imagineer. Anything I want to do, I
Yes.
know it can happen, right? And I kind of I've also been, again, with my executive recruitment, I was always following TechCrunch and all the latest technology. So I've always stayed at the bleeding edge of every new technology that comes out. And I play with it and I understand it. And then I get to see how it fits at a business level. And I know enough about technology to know when things are not going to be plausible. But I don't code. I don't write code.
Yeah.
I've got an amazing CTO. He's a world-class CTO. In fact, he's a worldwide recognized CTO who makes all of my BS real.
Yes. Yeah. And look, and just reminding you, listening to George Easton, episode 637, but I think that's why I was going down that path is pretty obvious now. But I think, you got to play to your strengths, right? And I think the fact that you've grown to be, North America's largest Zoho partner, 60 team members, etc.,
By head count. I can't say it by any other metric, but by head count. Yeah.
by head count, gotcha, is the fact that, you play to your strengths and then you have the technology side. Unfortunately, what I often see is the opposite. People often say to me, how do you grow a tech or AI consulting business? I said, well, I'll tell you how not to. And that's fall in love with your technology and then try to sell it, right? That's how you don't grow one. I think the opposite is what you've just described. So, I think, look, you've got a wonderful journey, but I think that's the story, right? Is you've played to your strengths. You've been an entrepreneur since you were 17, and that then you're a bit like me. I love technology. And when I had our consulting business, my partner did all the actual deep tech and he did the operations, but I was the strategy, sales, and marketing guy. Right. So that's why we worked really well and we sold it to a Google partner. I think, that's the key message here. But I want to go now a slightly different way, which is this, team. You've sort of friendly acquired businesses or brought businesses into the portfolio. You're now 60 people. How do you, as a leader of a 60-person business, what's your leadership style and how do you lead those 60 people?
Well, that's an interesting question that I don't really often think about how I do that. I just do it. I enjoy being fun loving,
Yeah.
approachable. I'm a radical transparency believer. I think that when you're having problems, cash flow in 14 years of existence has reared its ugly head as an issue. And I think that until we're sitting on millions in the treasury, that's always going to be
Yes.
the issue that is most prevalent. I mean, I heard some time ago that until you are $10 million dollars in annual run rate every year, that's going to be a thing that will come back and back again.
Yeah.
Whenever we've got challenges in the organization or whenever we've got victories in the organization, it's really, really important just to be very transparent and to be very, I'd say, emotionally put together. You've got a cool head, you've got to be, pressure can't get to you in any way, shape, or form, and you've got to be able to lead by example. A really great friend of mine said to me the other day, the right vantage point for culture in businesses like ours, where we sort of struggle and people say, well, how would you describe the culture of your business? And some people would say things like, oh, we're a family. And I think, oh, I don't know about that. I mean, families can be quite toxic.
Correct.
So, are we a family or is this a team? I don't know. Team is a lot of like individual people. And what he said was, I think we're a village. And I really like that analogy a great deal. A village is still that individual bit. There are families within the village. And yet, when a village is really thriving, they will come together and they will shoulder the flooding lake. They will hand the bucket and put out the fire. They will rise together to the challenge. And so I think that's the most appropriate way of thinking about our organization. I wish it were my words. They're not. But I told him they are now.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
So,
it didn't do Steve Jobs any harm taking something from someone and building on it. I'm sure.
yes, sir.
I'm sure we can all do it. Talked about the fact that you love to stay at the front of that user technology, and we can't go through a podcast and not talk about AI at the moment. Tell us what you're learning and your predictions of how this whole platform, no code, low code AI thing is going to sort of play out.
Yeah, okay.
I
I think
only keep the easy questions for the live audience.
well, actually, so I'm rather proud of the way Ionate is built. We are a full cycle business management consultancy, and I guess it's really important to understand what that means in our definition. So in a full service business management consultancy, you would see things like accounting services and legal services. Now, while we do have a CPA and bookkeepers on staff, we don't involve ourselves in those types of things at all.
Yes.
And we also will regard your legal contracts because we're always looking to create systems alignment and so on. But that's not us. When we say full cycle, what we mean to say is your entire client life cycle, we can care for under one roof because we do brand, marketing, communications, advertising, systems, engineering, like all the whole gamut, right?
Yes.
Okay, so now your question was about AI. Many moons ago, we made a declaration that, we were going to be an AI first company. I mean, we've been building AI into our technology offerings for some time now, a couple of years anyway, but that still wasn't quite the total enmeshment with AI as it very much is now. The idea of that move was to sort of say to people, listen, we're going to grow like crazy. But as we grow like crazy, it's not just about adding more bodies. In
Yes.
fact, actually, it's not even about adding necessarily any bodies. I'm not saying that we won't hire people, but what I am saying is that with the use of AI, you become less body and more brain. There's this famous Seth Godinism where he talks about how if you're a mediocre copywriter, your goose is cooked. However, if you're a great copywriter, well, there's always room for you. I very much believe in that. And one of the things that makes, I'd say, Ionate sort of uniquely positioned in this moment is that quite unlike if you were just a web design shop, buddy, I don't know, you're going to be in for a squeeze but when you have that full cycle where you can kind of defend against the commoditization of marketing or the commoditization of copywriting or whatever, because you can measure everything click to close. You can see the whole of your client's, business. And you really are the one, I don't want to, be crude, but the one throat to choke for them. You get the ability to quarterback everything. So they want to breed UI UX. They want this best of breed engineering, consulting, you name it. And when you can then say to them, hey, 6 months ago, the thing I'm going to do for you next week would have taken me 3 months, but it's going to take me 3 days.
Yes.
And they're paying you, and we're nailing contracts with people where they're paying for our time regularly, right? We get into like a sprint-based system. And so now AI is making us accomplish our clients' goals so much faster. And yet we haven't commoditized any aspect of what we're up to over here. We've in fact just emboldened ourselves to still earn the same amount of money,
Yes.
just get to the goals, 3, 4, 10x faster than we would have been even a year ago.
Really well said. And to me, I think the other key success, which I talked about before, is what you don't do is fall in love with your product. I think the other thing is, you're predominantly in four niches, right? I always say start with one at least, but I'd say start with a niche or a niche, but then be the chocolate wheel. And what I mean by the chocolate wheel is what you talk about, which is, that full cycle business model where you are providing, you are the expert across all of that user tech for that particular client or that particular niche. And I think that's a brilliant way of, I think, having your cake and eat it, that you become an expert so people know that you know them. You got great case studies and your cost of sales and marketing's lower by, for you got four niches. That's great. You know that better than anyone. But then the other thing is that you actually can solve all of their work. And I think that's the model to success. And if you're at the moment thinking, well, George has created a brilliant business. He's, 60 staff. I don't know how many digital staff, but let's say there's 100 digital staff. Like he's got the formula. The formula is not difficult. It's the way you execute it. Two key things that you should take from this. One is that you've got to do strategy, sales, and marketing as the leader of the business. There's no one else that can do that for you. So you have to do that. And the second is have a smart business model like George has created. As far as the AI from a user point of view, do you quickly think that like for example, I'm Claude ChatGPT into my Notion as an example. That's the way that I operate my little world at the moment now, thanks to the the ease of Claude plugging it in. So I don't really
Yeah.
go into Notion as much as I used to. I don't go into Gmail as much as I used to. The AI is basically going in for me. Do you think it's going to play out that way, or do you think you'll spend time in Zoho, for example, and Zoho will have the AI that supports you? You know, like, or will it be both? No, but what's your quick view on that?
Yeah, everybody's the AI is moving so fast now. Every tool out there is rolling out agentic in some form or another. And I mean, I think that what we're going to end up finding soon is more versions of private AI, where you're going to go and get a local instance, and so you're going to give it secure permissions into your whatever your knowledge bases are, your Atlassian, your Google Drive, or whatever. That's where I think we're going to start to see people, because I know that there's in the realm. So for example, here at Inate, while we do use a lot of AI, we're a cyber shop. So we will go and scrub data out of AI before we throw it in, so that we're not exposing client private records into public AI engines at the moment. We are working on bringing AI into a private instance for ourselves where we can feel much more comfortable about its guardrails around it. And this is an area where I don't get too far into the weeds. Again, I punt. I've got a world-class CTO who's handling that for us. But I think that's one that I really am keen on about these days. The other one is, are you at all a user or aware of N8N?
Yes. I'd say a poor.
Yeah, that's
Give me a 1 out of 10 for my N8N experience so far, but yes.
Yeah, there's a lot of really clever things that are capable on that whole N8N journey. And, some of them are a little like, wow. I mean, I've seen, I'm sure like you, right? You probably follow some thought leaders in some certain areas.
Yeah.
I happen to be an X guy. And so there's a few people on X that I follow that I think like it's actually mind-boggling. Like I know you've probably seen some of these avatar guys where
Yes.
and they're giving a video, and then they're like, this isn't even so and so. This is his avatar. And then you realize, I wonder if he even knows this video was made. Like, I have no idea that he knows that this video was made, because I know that the way I already know how to structure the entirety of all of this in an N8N engine, that it can just pick up some news somewhere, have
Yep.
something written in your tone of voice, like string it through all these engines and then produce a video, and it goes live, and it's making you money as a content creator. And meanwhile, you're sleeping in your bed.
Yeah. I know.
It's crazy.
I know. Well, there's a couple. I'm a mad golfer. For those that listen to the podcast, you probably know that. And there's now they do the Bryson interviews where he'll say something about his first round, and you watch it for the first 10 seconds, and then you think, surely he's not saying that. Wow, is he really saying that? And then you realize, no, it's just created by AI, but it's very hard to distinguish. It's a whole other kettle of fish, and we won't have time for today of how that's going to play out, but N8N very much so. What we're going to do now is pause, thank our sponsors, and then we're going to come back for the rapid fire round. Brilliant execution, terrible strategy. You can solve any client problem, but you're stuck in the same revenue patterns, same deal sizes, same time for money trap. I'm Paul, and I built and sold a 7-figure consulting business, but here's what I've learned mentoring other consultants. The real breakthroughs happen when you combine my experience with live problem solving of people going through exactly what you're facing now. In my group program, Steve works through his VA delegation challenge with Jed. Jed shares what's actually working. Andrew tests his pricing strategy with Casey, and Casey demonstrates his client onboarding system. Everyone's figuring it out together with my guidance based on what I learned the hard way. It's not theory, it's real-time strategic thinking with consultants in the trenches plus someone who's already made the journey. Stop grinding alone. Start thinking strategically. Go to paulhigginsmentoring.com/WWM. That's paulhigginsmentoring.com/WWM. So, George, ready for the rapid fire round?
I think so.
All right, let's do this. You can do it. So we talked about N8N. Is there any other AI that's really blown your mind at the moment that you're using?
I must admit I like to use the most is Manus. I feel like every week they have a very good and purposeful update that I'm like, yeah, I like you. That one's turned into my short-term favorite. Do you want me to tell
Go.
you why?
What? Quickly, let's go.
Well, I mean, mostly just because I can do a pitch deck or anything like that to get an idea across to my own team or to other clients in a quality way that I would have before I would have pulled a designer and an engineer into a room to validate ideas and then to do iterations on, right? So now I'm able to take what's up here into something that like looks great because of that, because of their capabilities in a matter of, maybe an hour of wrestling it by myself
Yes.
Friday night at 11 o'clock. I don't need to disturb. So whenever the mouse wheel turns, I can make stuff that by Monday morning, I'm like, I had this great idea. And pitch it to my staff or pitch it to my clients or whatnot. So I find that to be quite freeing when I really have no design skills myself, development chops myself.
Go to market. What's a go to market that's pleasantly surprising you at the moment?
Well, I think what we've seen is just one of our tactics starting to work quite well for us. We built a lot of applications. They're in a lot of different marketplaces. We found that that would be maybe easier and have a higher trust quotient to instead of doing our own advertising. And that's proven now to be the case. So apps, people come to us, it's sticky, they need that thing. And then we have the right to market to them gradually and build some trust as we go. And then we can get ourselves into some larger projects with them.
Yeah, and I've got to give a quick shout out to Neil Patel. I'm pretty sure he doesn't listen regularly, but he was talking about that quite some time ago, but there wasn't the ease of creating them right now. I'm not saying it's dead easy, but it's a lot easier to create with AI now than what it used to be. The next one is where do you go to learn? You as the leader, where do you go to learn?
Yeah, that's interesting. I have numerous peers. I've got an advisory board of my own, and for every client that you engage with, they teach you something too, right? Like it's not like your clients are just babies and you're some genius. That's not how I roll at all. In fact, as I'm solving the problem that they're having, they illuminate me to the other things. And what I end up doing, it's kind of like great art, right? You go, oh yeah, and you steal what he's doing really well in his business, not for his competitor, but in a broad way. And I'm like, why did I never think of that? I have like 4 or 5 or 10 other clients that need to think this way. And so it's been beautiful as a full cycle business management consultant who at the beginning especially was very much a generalist.
Yes.
That's exactly what I would do. I'd find something the software industry is doing really well, and I would apply that to the housing industry,
Yes.
and vice versa.
Last one. What do you know now that you wish you had known earlier?
What do I know now that I wish I known earlier? Well, I think what I would have done earlier is I would have, instead of using so many only subcontractors at the beginning, I would have gone with more employees. That just means to say that in our earlier days, we didn't scale as much when we were struggling to get people's attention. They may have been great people with excellent talent that I was able to find, and even at rates where I was able to make good money, on as a margin over and above them. But when you don't really have people's attention, 100%, then it's really hard to get a great work product out of them consistently. And so that's my number one advice to anybody is while it smells like a good idea to go with subcontractors from like maybe you're afraid of taking on like the commitment of the employee, take the commitment of the employee. You're going to hustle harder, you're going to get the money in the door, but you're also going to have a more consistent and regular work product.
Yeah, fantastic. And I think that quickly leads back to the fact that if you've got certainty around your sales and marketing, well, then that gives you the ability to do that more. So I think it goes back to what I think has been your key strength is that strategy, sales, and marketing. So it's been brilliant having you on the podcast today. Well done for all your success, and look forward to continuing to stay in touch and maybe one day getting my own hyperbaric chamber as well. But George, fantastic for having you on today.
Thank you for having me, Paul. What a pleasure.
What a great interview with George. And George's story shows that sustainable consulting growth comes from becoming indispensable rather than just skilled. His decision to own his IP, build full cycle capabilities, and maintain radical transparency with his team created a business that survived multiple economic challenges and positioned him ready now for growth and potentially an acquisition. Reach out to George Easton on LinkedIn and thank him for sharing his journey from solo consultant to 60-person consultancy. You can learn more about his full cycle approach at ion8.net, and you can watch this episode of the Paul Higgins Mentoring channel on YouTube. And please reach out to me. Let me know that you watch or listen to the show. It always means the world to me. And I'll see you next time on the Paul Higgins podcast. What stood out to you from today's conversations? Look, building a consulting practice that doesn't revolve around you isn't easy, but it's possible. The consultants and the experts I interview have proven that. Every week I share insights from those conversations, practical strategies from people who've actually done it or help others do it. If you want to learn more from this experience, get my newsletter at paulhigginsmentoring.com/newsletter. Just practical stuff from consultants who's figured it all out. And if this was helpful, share it with another consultant. We're all trying to crack the same code. Thanks for listening.